Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across
the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find everything. I mean, links to the audio-only podcast, links to our stream, to the social media sites where we simulcast the radio show, everything. Good morning and welcome to Tuesday. I know, it feels like Monday, but it's not. Yesterday was Monday, and that's a better way to spend a Monday right there. I guarantee it. Welcome to the program. The shortened, heightened 4-day week here. It's the best part about a 3-day weekend is the 4-day work week afterwards, right? I mean, that's just perfect. That is just perfect. Welcome to the program, and thanks for coming in and joining us. It is the Michael Dukes Show, and we're ready to dive into it. Tuesday means what? Tuesday means that it's time for the weekly top 3, where we're going to dive down into issues related to the state with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. He's going to come in and be joining us and talk about 3 big things today, including the ADN editorial board. They seem to be sensing weakness in the Alaska House. And then we've got the next big concern on the PFD. And finally, the latest ploy from the top 20%. We're going to talk about those things and more. Plus some headlines. Who's got your headlines? There's a few that are going on, including, I don't know if you saw, I mean, again, we don't cover much of the national or world news here on the program, but I did say that even I heard about the attacks in Moscow, where apparently Ukrainian soldiers, attackers, dissidents, whatever, launched drone attacks into Moscow itself. That must have been a little shocking. Anyway, some interesting stuff happening while you were going on. And yes, I did have a 4-day weekend. And yes, it was glorious. Absolutely fantastic. Couldn't have been better unless it was a 40-day weekend. Right? 4-day weekend. What's better than a 4-day weekend? A 5-day weekend. Yes, that's exactly. And maybe we'll have one of those sometime. I don't know. But boy, it was sure nice. Got some stuff done around the house. Helped my wife with the planning of the things. Talked my son into mowing the lawn again. And did a few more things. And then just spent some time just hanging out. Got the grill fired up for the first time. Was having a hard time with my grill. Finally got it fixed and did a cookout yesterday. It was just fun, man. It was just so fun and relaxing and restorative. That's what it is. My only complaint is I had about 10.8 minutes of sun this weekend. My wife and I was like, the sun started coming out. I'm like, we should go outside and work on it. We were outside for 10 minutes and in the sunshine, so nice, so warm. And then it clouded up again. I don't know what's going on. What happened to the global warming? All right, I want to know. I was looking forward to some more global warming and hot sunshine like Savannah, Sahara weather here. What's going on? Why? I mean, I'm looking outside. I got a little peek through my curtains here in the studio. And it is black and gloomy out there. What the heck, man? I would just like a little I would like just a little summer before summer's over. My wife looked at me yesterday and she goes, what's going on? Because, we start losing daylight in like 22 days. Where is my summer? She was a little upset. She's like, we start losing daylight in 22 days. Where is my summer? To which I had, I'm sorry, honey, it's not me. I just stepped away. I have no idea what's going on, but I really, really, I really, really want to know what's going on. Okay. So welcome back. What else is going on this week? Hey, this weekend I will be emceeing an event down in Homer that goes to support the student scholarship fund in Homer down at Bear Creek. They're doing the big music festival. And it's going to be all the proceeds go to help the student scholarship fund down there in Homer. And so I'll be emceeing the Bear Creek Music Festival down there. They're putting it on in the big botanical gardens this weekend. So fingers crossed it's going to be nice this weekend in Homer because I won't get out in the rain. I'll be under the gazebo thing, but everybody else will be. Let's hope it's nice. All right. That's what I'm saying. Come down and see me. It'll be fun. It's going to be good stuff. All right, on to the news, on to the headlines. This was an interesting piece. The former owner of the North Pole Petroleum Refinery, known as Williams, Alaska, it's been determined by the Alaska Supreme Court in a ruling on Friday, said that they are financially liable for groundwater pollution that has contaminated the drinking water wells around the refinery. Williams owned and operated the refinery in North Pole from 1977 to 2004 when it was sold to Flint Hills. Part of the refining process involved the use of a chemical known as sulfolene, which is a solvent. And it was determined that because of poor maintenance and spills, that sulfolene had been spilled into the ground and then reached into the groundwater, the water table. Williams, Alaska detected the chemical in local groundwater as early as 1996, but didn't report that fact until 2001, 5 years later, according to the DEC. This just gets good. DEC has also detected the groundwater was polluted by chemicals used in firefighting foam, commonly known as PFAS, which this spring the legislature voted to ban the use of that in the state of Alaska. In 2014, Flint Hills and the state of Alaska sued Williams, saying it would bear the cost of cleanup and containment. In the years since the sale, the plume of sulfolene has spread underground away from the refinery, and there's been a ton of homes affected by this. And the city of North Pole, in fact, was affected by it. They had to do some changes to their water treatment systems and everything else, and new wells. And it's been a hot mess. Even before I left, even before I left Fairbanks and moved down here to the Matsu, this was affecting people all over the place. Now, luckily for me, not where I live, but I had friends that were like, they couldn't use their well waters anymore. They had to go on to bottled water. They had to figure out how do we get piped in. It's a hot mess. Williams raised a variety of arguments in their defense, including claims that sulfolene isn't harmful, blatantly false. The DEC was negligent in its oversight. That's a reason why, hey, it's not our fault. They should have been. We knew about it for 5 years and didn't say anything, but they were negligent in their oversight. And that the refinery sales contract capped damages, and that the state was engaging in unconstitutional taking. They were trying desperately, everything in their power to dodge this bullet. The cost, according to the judge's estimate, is approaching $100 million when considering the cost of the new piped water system, the need to provide bottled water in the meantime, and the cost of new city-drilled wells. Now, they're going to appeal this to the Supreme Court, or they did appeal it to the Supreme Court, rather, which rejected Williams's argument, except in one case, which was a procedural error that the justices said could be fixed by the lower court judge. But it was a 16-day bench trial in 2019 that initially found them mostly responsible for transitioning the costs of transitioning homes to piped water. This was the final nail in that coffin, and the Supreme Court has said, nope, it's on you. So good news for all you people out there in North Pole who have been fighting this thing for so long. It's a good deal. I'm pretty excited about it. What was the other thing that caught my attention? That one. This one. It's from the Alaska Beacon. Talking about Alaska has this nurse shortage. But I mean, there's a nationwide problem with nursing shortage, medical professional, especially post-pandemic. But Alaska's nurse shortage is acknowledged as one of the biggest ones that's going on out there. A bill that aims to get nurses licensed and working faster in Alaska by joining a 40-state coalition. There's a licensure coalition that would allow them. It basically allows reciprocity, right? We're all familiar with that on the firearms, concealed carry reciprocity. This is the same kind of thing. If you're licensed in one state, then you can practice in another. You get basically it's a faster way of getting your license into Alaska, because as of right now, if you're licensed in another state and they come up here, it could take 3 to 4 months to get your license here in the state of Alaska, which is and that department, the Department of Licensing and all that stuff under the Commerce and Community Development, they're struggling to be able to try and keep up with this. Meanwhile, we're still short of nurses. So Mike Prax put in this bill that would have had us join this coalition, licensure coalition, which again has 40 other states in it. And of course, the union said, well, that harms nurses. According to Joelle Hall, it destroys their bargaining power and their ability to protect themselves on the job. She says the compact, which is the coalition, takes away Alaska's nurses' ability to strike because they could be replaced with a workforce from out of state. Well, there's a nationwide shortage, so I can't say that them be scraping work. I mean, they're going to be a tool that they would use to put downward pressure on nurses and their wages and their working conditions. Her solution to this problem? Well, we can't just trade nurses across state lines. This is a problem of supply, and the supply is constrained by universities in our state. So we need to, we as a state, when we disinvest in the university, we're not meeting our critical need for our workforce. Oh, more spending in the university. That's what the answer is. Of course, that answer is going to take years to manifest anything, if that was really the solution. But even if it was a solution, it's going to take years to manifest. It doesn't fix the problem right now. And even Jared Kosin, the executive director of the Alaska Hospital and Healthcare Association, says, well, yeah, I mean, she's right, but it doesn't solve the problem. I mean, it's right that we need more schooling, but it still doesn't solve the problem now. And this does. But you just got to love it how they're like, no, we can't do that. We need the... I come home from the weekend and, I come back from the weekend and nothing changes. Nothing changes. Still, it's a problem, right? All right, we're out of time. We got to go. The weekly top 3 is up next. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We're ready to go. Brad Keithley, our guest. And then, of course, Chris Story in hour 2. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Hi. Howdy. You guys ready? You guys all ready? Oh man. Okay, let me go back up here. Brian said he downloaded the Durham report, started working through it, lasted about 20 minutes. I mean, yeah, that's a she realizes that the summer equinox starts on the solstice, right? That's what she said, Bill, 22 days, and that we start losing daylight. I mean, that was the point, you know. Hope pantsuit out. Wasn't the groundwater in North Pole already bad? No, it wasn't bad. It was drinkable. And yeah. And didn't this cause an issue for Flint Hills? Yes, that's why Flint Hills and the state sued Williams, because what part of this wasn't disclosed about what was going on. And so they sold the refinery, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, our bad, sulfate. And Flint Hills is like, whoa. Oh man. Okay. Nationwide comment. Bill says try 6 months to a year to get your nurse's license. Yeah. Okay. I'm going here. He's thing 22 days till my grandson's 12th birthday. Okay. Hello. Good morning. All right. Let's get down into this. Just getting back into the groove, my friends. Getting back into the groove. You ready to go? I've got to take my ritual beating. That's what we're doing here. My ritual weekly beating. For the last, I had to brace myself here to get ready for it. All right. Hello, Brad. How you doing?
Good morning, Michael. I'm doing great. That was a pretty interesting 15 minutes. You went from smooth, chilled out, relaxed, 3-day weekend to Joel Hall in the span of 15 minutes.
I did. Yeah. You know, the relaxation only lasts so long, because then you got to dive back into both feet. You know, it's like I got out and I just decontaminated myself and patted myself dry, and I feel pretty good. And then I'm like, oh, now I've got to climb back into the stew. Okay, all right, let's do it. Feet first. Let's make it happen. That's what goes on. But oh, it was nice while it lasted. It was nice while it lasted. So it's all good. How about yourself? How was your holiday weekend? I mean, I know you're retired and all that, so it's like always a weekend. But well, I mean, how was your holiday weekend?
Oh, I spent it flying. I came down to visit my mother, and so I plunged right into the middle of the Memorial Day travel schedule. Did a flight to Chicago and did a train from Chicago downstate to where my mother lives. So
You think you'd know better than that, my friend. I mean, leave a couple days early or something. Avoid most of the headache. You know, I mean, that's just madness right there.
Well, I did do this. I did take a red eye. I did fly overnight, and that's actually better. I mean, the flights are full, and it's discomfortable as heck, but it's not as crazy in the airport. So I did do that.
Well, good. I mean, I barely left my house for 4 days. I said, my kid, it's like Terry's like, well, we need this. I'm like, well, that's why we have this daughter, and that's why she drives one of my cars. You go to the store. I'm not leaving. I'm staying right here. That's why we've got that. That's the price you pay for living in my house. You know, I was like, I'm not leaving, and it was beautiful. It was glorious just to do the thing here. But
with the 5 minutes of sunshine.
It was like, seriously. I mean, I like almost timed it. I'm like, oh, look, it's about 10:50. Oh, let's go outside for a few minutes. And then it's like clouded up, and I'm like, what the heck just happened? And that was it. The whole weekend. That was the whole weekend. That was all the sunshine you get.
You don't think that was cause and effect, do you?
Shh. Don't rain on my parade. I'm trying to convince myself that God doesn't hate me. All right. Here we go. We're jumping back into it. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share, like and follow. Do all that stuff. Let's go. Okay. Wow, that snuck up on me. All right, you ready to go? We're going to dive into this now with Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. It's the weekly top three. Three big things that Brad thinks that we should be paying attention to. He is, of course, the founder and director of Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We just got caught up on all of our holiday weekend chit-chat, and now we're down to business. We take things seriously around here. Sorry. I had a hard time with that for just a minute. All right, Brad, the weekly top three. The first one is that the ADN editorial board appears to be sensing It senses weakness in its prey. The Alaska House of Representatives is now in a precarious position. They're about to pounce. The ADN is doing their thing. Give us the rundown here.
Well, this weekend's editorial from the ADN editorial board is an interesting one. They try to leverage the disarray in the House majority into what effectively would be a kill shot on the PFD. They argue that now that the House has demonstrated reasonableness in the view of the ADN editorial board by agreeing to a 25-75 PFD, not stretching out the special session, trying to leverage, gain counter leverage to get a higher PFD, and agreed to the spending that the Senate dumped on them. Now that the House has demonstrated that they're reasonable, and even the House leadership, they said even the House leadership is reasonable, because even though they opposed the budget and even though they wanted a higher PFD, they didn't stop the session. They didn't stop the bill from going to the floor, and they didn't engage in the dilatory tactics they could have as leadership. Even they are appearing reasonable according to the ADN. All of that setup really ought to make you very, very concerned. and then the last paragraph goes for the kill shot. It says, let's keep that ball rolling. Governor Dunleavy should call an October special session in Anchorage with a narrow, achievable focus on the sole issue of a spending cap. And earlier in the piece, they described the spending cap that they're talking about as one that rolls the PFD inside the spending cap, similar to the amendment that Will Stapp ran on the spending cap, unsimilar to what Ben Carpenter passed out of Ways and Means, but similar to the spending cap amendment that Will Stapp pushed in the House Finance Committee, that ended in House Finance Committee exploding on the issue and not finishing the issue.
Right.
The ADN says let's narrowly focus on the achievable focus on the sole issue of a spending cap with the PFD inside the spending cap. And as I said, that would be the kill shot on the PFD, because what's going on, if you look at, as we talked about time and time earlier on the show, if you look at what's going on with the budget, traditional revenues over the course of the next decade are declining. Even with the spending cap, spending would be going up. If you throw the PFD inside the spending cap, what that does, as did Will Stapp's amendment, what that does is elevate the spending cap by another $1 billion, because you would say, well, you need to save room for the PFD, but it doesn't guarantee the PFD. So
right.
Ben Carpenter,
it guarantees another $1 billion in spending, but they don't have to spend it on the PFD. I mean, they use the argument, we need to put this under here so we can give you your PFD, but then, now we can take your PFD and you don't get any.
Right. So it increases the spending. I mean, Ben Carpenter's objection to it was exactly correct. It increases the spending cap by putting the PFD inside. It increases the spending cap by $1 billion, but there's no guarantee that it's spent on the PFD. And with declining revenues, traditional revenues, you can see what's happening. The PFD is more and more and more of the PFD, until by 2032, the PFD is almost gone. More and more of the PFD is used to support spending, is diverted over to spending, as opposed to government spending, as opposed to being used for the PFD. So ADN, it's going for the kill shot. No mention at all in the editorial as part of this overall fiscal plan that the ADN is pushing, of guaranteeing the PFD, putting the PFD in the Constitution. None of that. and none of alternative revenues, substitute revenues, which would enable you to back out using PFD cuts as taxes in the form of PFD cuts to fund the budget with alternative revenues, lower impact revenues on middle and lower income Alaska families. None of that. So it's the top 20% kill shot. They're trying to, what they're trying to do, if the governor went down this road, what they would be doing is setting up the death of the PFD, the kill shot on the PFD, and guaranteeing additional government spending, conversion of the PFD until it's gone to government spending. It's the top 20%'s dream case because spending continues to go up, government spending continues to go up, and PFD cuts, taxes on middle and lower income Alaska families, are used to fund it. There's no mention, no discussion, no consideration of alternative revenues, because after all, you've got the PFD inside the cap. You just keep consuming more and more of that.
Right.
A spending cap, even if you keep the PFD outside of the spending cap, is not much better, because what will happen is, if you don't guarantee the PFD, is not much better, because what will happen is you'll just keep lowering the amount of the PFD that's outside the spending cap, diverting more and more of the PFD inside the spending cap to support government spending. So there's really a spending cap alone, a sole spending cap alone is not an overall solution, is not a solution that is fair to middle and lower income Alaska families. It just takes the PFD. To have a full solution, as we've talked time and time again on the program, to have an actual fiscal plan, an actual full solution that's fair to everybody, you need to guarantee the PFD at some level. You need a spending cap to protect against additional spending, and you need alternative revenues to substitute for the gap that's created by guaranteeing the PFD,
right.
Gap that's created by government
of course,
spending.
These are all things that are in Ways and Means that Ben Carpenter's been working on since the beginning of this term. And he's just, again, getting sandbagged and pushed back. The spending cap was going through until that last minute amendment by STAP, which created this whole, challenge to begin with. They're working on it, but what's going to happen? Who knows?
Yeah, and the spending cap, I was a little troubled in the first place by the spending cap going out on its own, leaving Ways and Means on its own without the other provisions. Because, as I say, even if the PFD is outside the spending cap, without the additional provisions of a guarantee for the PFD and alternative revenues, it's just the death of the PFD another way. STEP's amendment certainly made it even clearer what was going on. But I just think it's interesting that the ADN, trying to play on this division that surfaced in the House majority in the final days, was always there, but surfaced very publicly in the final days, trying to play on this division, saying, "Oh, you all are reasonable. You guys who supported the budget, you're reasonable. Even the leadership's reasonable because they didn't use dilatory tactics to hold the budget ransom hostage while they tried to work out the issues on the PFD. You guys are reasonable too. So let's just take all this reasonableness. Let's all put it in a room. Now let's keep it focused on a single issue. We don't want you guys going off on a tangent and being unreasonable.
No full fiscal plan. Only the one thing we want you to talk about.
You talk about from time to time, and I would as well, that the PFD. Let's do the PFD first. And some people on the left, on the progressive side, let's do revenues first. And the Chamber of Commerce and the top 20%, let's do a spending cap first, because that way down the road, we're protected from ever having taxes on top of PFD cuts. And all we lose in all this is the PFD. So everybody's got their preferred let's go first item. And clearly you can see the top 20%, the Binkley family, what the Binkley family is pushing as their preferred solution. Give us a spending cap first. Right. And then, Michael, this is so bad. There's not even a whiff of, and then we'll address everything else. It is. Y'all are so reasonable. Let's just give me everything I want right now. The top 20%. Give me everything I want right now. And there's not even I'll consider your stuff later. It's just give it all to me, and we'll stop and call it a victory then.
Right. That'll be the solution. This is the one-hit wonder right here. This is the solution. Donna Hardwin's in the chat room. She says at the current spending rate, the PFD will be gone during Dunleavy's second term at the current spending rate. I mean, I'm just, we know that it's days are numbered. We know that its days are numbered based on the current makeup of the legislature and what's going on right now. It's just now it's just a matter of time. Is it next year? Is it 5 years from now? We're in the decline. This is where it's going.
Well, yeah, I mean, if the legislature keeps going down, if the House majority keeps fracturing in the way they fractured in the final days this session, if they can't get their act together to hold fast on the PFD going forward, that's probably right. I mean, I would say that I think most who voted for the majority who were voting for members who became part of the majority, most voting for them thought that PFD protection would be at least part of their mandate, part of what they considered important. But the ADN is highlighting the fracture that occurred in the final days and saying, well, looks like they don't care about the PFD that much. So let's just go ahead and get what we want, and we'll call it good.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. I don't even know what to say. All right, let's move on to the number 2. Give me a tease here, and we'll take an early break for number 2, which is of course the next big concern for the PFD.
Well, there was an article in the Alaska Beacon, which I don't think made it to the ADN or the Juneau Empire or any of the other papers. But it's by Andrew Kitcheman, and it says the headline is Alaska Permanent Fund account that pays for state budget dividends is under pressure. And it's talking about an issue that came up, was discussed heavily at the most recent Permanent Fund Board meeting down in Kenai Soldotna last week or the week before maybe, and focuses on a developing situation that has raised concerns. As we will talk about, the concern is sort of Bert Stedman made, and we'll talk about why that is. But it's a concern that I think is going to keep surfacing in the legislature in the coming session.
What, another self-inflicted wound? Say it ain't so. That's not possible. I mean, it just doesn't happen around here, right? Brad Keithley is our guest, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues. Your home for Common Sense Radio. Back with more right after this. Don't go anywhere. We'll return.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The ERA is under pressure because BS keeps moving money to the corpus. That's Bert Stedman, by the way, for those of you who did. I mean, she wasn't like saying...
That was just BS.
I mean, that was just Bert Stedman. So it's the ERA is under pressure because Bert Stedman keeps moving money into the corpus. Which, again, is that and the fact that they continue to monkey with the funding source of the permanent funds over the last couple of years and not paying it out of the ERA like everything else. I mean, this is just... Oh, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. Brad, I don't know if you want to make further comment on that. You know, I think it was interesting to watch how the House majority, in the coalition, in those final days, in that final 10-day period, 12-day period, that's when out of the blue, you had this spending cap, which wasn't great to begin with. And then
Well, Michael, you froze on me. I don't know if you froze generally or exactly what I ought to do now. I don't think we've ever had a freeze that's lasted this long. So maybe I ought to back out and come back in. Only you can do that. Sure hope you're not expecting me to continue to talk during this freeze. And thank goodness it happened during the break, right? So the counter is still going at my end. Looking like my PC. Oh, so I just got a message from Dukes that says his PC crashed. His computer crashed. So hold on. He's coming back. So I must be the only one streaming right now. You always wish you had a good joke for a situation like this. But Michael did say that he's on his way back. So hopefully he's back by the time we go live again or go back into the regular segment again. You can tell the chat room. I'm telling the chat room, Michael. I'm telling the chat. Oh, the chat room. Oh, I'm never in the chat room. Let's see. Let me figure out if I've got a computer that I can get to the chat room in. Oh, well, if the chat room can see this. So, yes, chat room. Michael's trying to get back. I used to try to follow the chat room while we were doing the segment, and it just got too confusing. My brain couldn't hold down everything that was going on. So I just decided to concentrate on whatever we're talking about at the time and catch up with the chat room later.
Okay. Well, I'm here for the second here. That was unfortunate. I mean, I guess unfortunate that it happened during the break, but not exactly what I was anticipating here. It'll be a second before I get my camera back. Meanwhile, we're about 60 seconds out from rejoining the radio. Hi, Brad.
Hi, Michael.
I was in the middle of making I'm sure I was making a valid point too when everything just pooped the bed. So I don't know exactly what happened there. I got the blue screen of death, and all of a sudden the computer's just like, "We don't like you. You were rebooting right now." So,
well, I demonstrated
right.
I'm not very good at holding down the floor. So,
yeah, no, that's okay. All right. Well, we're about to rejoin the video. Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Hey, look at that! I got the camera back. We are 24 seconds out from rejoining the radio. And do I have, good God, do I have everything? Yep, I got everything. Okay, I got music, I got sound, I got this, I got that, come on. What's up? There we go. All right. Here we go. Hold still. Common sense. This is what it feels like.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke show.
Yeah, a lot bit of a pain in the had a little bit of a technical freak out there during the commercial break, which was perfect. I mean, I couldn't have asked for it to happen at a better time because it was during the commercial break. But we're back, and Brad Keithley with Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets is our guest. And we were going into the number 2 of the weekly top 3. Number 2 was the next concern for the PFD. Brad, take it away.
Well, for the permanent fund as a whole. So the way the permanent fund operates, is the permanent fund corpus generates earnings from time to time, and hopefully most of the time. Those earnings go into the earnings reserve, and then the earnings reserve is used both to fund the PFD and to fund the POMV draw that's increasingly being relied on to fund government spending. The function of that depends on the permanent fund corpus generating earnings that are then going into the earnings reserve account to regenerate, to refloat, to rebalance the draws that are being taken out of the earnings reserve to go to government. And this year is not a very good year. The earnings are down. In the past several years, the amount of excess or the amount of growth in the earnings reserve has varied from $3.2 billion in FY17, as much as $7.96 billion in FY21, $4.5 billion in FY22. By comparison, this year is now on track to come in at about 2.47 or maybe lower. So a significantly lower amount coming into the permanent fund earnings reserve from the permanent fund. That's lower than the amount needed to help regenerate the fund, to help keep the fund afloat going forward. And so the concern in the Alaska Beacon is, what if we have 2 years of this, or 3 years of this, or 4 years of this, where you're not getting enough water back into the account, you're not getting enough earnings back into the account to regenerate itself, to have enough to pay the POMV draw, and from that to pay the PFD, and to pay what's called inflation proofing, which is an amount that goes from the earnings reserve back into the corpus,
right?
To inflation proof the corpus. And the Alaska Beacon focuses on a concern in the permanent fund corporation itself that the earnings aren't going to be sufficient. Not only are they not sufficient this year, they're not sufficient in future years. And sort of a discussion about what do we do then if there's not enough coming into the earnings reserve. One of the problems, the reason I said this is sort of self-inflicted as we went to break, one of the problems that happens in the earnings reserve is you have these down years, but the earnings reserve historically has kept a bunch of money from prior good years in the earnings reserve as sort of a backstop to the down years, so that you would still have money in the earnings reserve even in the down years. Well, in response to Governor Dunleavy and some in the legislature a few years ago talking about, well, we'll pay the PFD by just taking more out of the earnings reserve. The earnings reserve has these high amounts in it. In response to that discussion, over the last couple of years, Senator Stedman and Senate Finance have led the way into taking excess amounts, more than is required to fund government, fund the PFD, and to pay for the inflation adjustment, to take excess amounts out of the earnings reserve and push it into the corpus. In FY22, for example, in FY20, for example, they took $4.76 billion in excess amounts and funded it into the corpus. Last year was FY22 was $4 billion. This year is $4.17 billion. A portion of that, about $1 billion of that, each of those draws was necessary for inflation proofing, but the remainder of it was just an excess amount. So what's happened is, by sort of reacting to what Dunleavy said about let's use these high earnings that are sitting in the earnings reserve, the reaction to that of moving those excess amounts in, or moving what he called excess amounts into the permanent fund corpus where they can't be touched, is to drain the earnings reserve down to the point that if it has a couple of bad years, then we run the risk of not having enough to fund both the POMV draw, PFD, and the inflation proofing. This isn't really a horrible situation. I mean, we've had these situations in the past. Excuse me. And what's happened is they've just deferred the inflation adjustment for 1 or 2 or up to 3 years, and then caught up when there's been when the markets have caught up, and when there's been an excess high earnings year in the permanent fund that's moved over to the earnings reserve, then used those high earnings years to sort of catch up on the inflation adjustment. So we've had a mechanism in the past that we've used to address that. But seemingly they want to forget about that mechanism going forward. So it's a combination of both the excess draws that Senator Stedman led, moving sort of a surplus in the earnings reserve over to the permanent fund corpus, and sort of the absence of talking about deferring on the inflation adjustment as a way to accommodate lows in the earnings reserve. That's sort of what's leading into this problem.
So it's a way of artificially creating pressure in the way that they want, so that they can say, well, see, now we have this crisis and now we have to deal with it. This is like never let a crisis go to waste, even crises that we create, is what you're saying.
Right. And the pressure is going to show up in terms of, well, we need to merge the earnings reserve and the permanent fund corpus, and then allow a 5% draw on that combined amount, which is what we're doing now, but allow a POMV draw on that combined amount plus a POMV draw on that combined amount, regardless of whether the earnings have been sufficient to fund it. And it's a way sort of setting up a future in which you could draw down the permanent fund corpus. So it's an artificial crisis in the sense that it's being created by a simultaneous move of a bunch of money out of the earnings reserve over into the permanent fund corpus, excess money that should have been sitting in the earnings reserve to sort of get us through this situation, and sort of the failure to contemplate the traditional method we've used in the past of deferring a couple of years of inflation adjustments to address this situation, creating a crisis out of that, and then talking about a solution to that crisis that then theoretically could open up the permanent fund corpus. Interesting situation. The pitch in Kitchenman's article is sort of an emerging crisis, and I suspect we'll see others pick up on that and say, "Oh my God, this is a problem. We've got to deal with this problem."
Right.
But as you listen to and as you read articles about that, keep in mind it's artificial, created by the past maneuver of moving excess out of the earnings reserve, and the future maneuver of not looking to defer the inflation adjustment.
I thought one of the benefits of the POMV was that it was supposed to be automatically inflation proofed. Wasn't that one of the arguments that they made originally?
Well, it's automatically inflation proofed in a different way. It's automatically inflation proofed in the sense that you limit the amount of draw from the permanent fund to the after inflation, the post inflation adjusted amount, and so by that you should leave enough in the earnings reserve, leave enough in earnings to be able to cover inflation, but you still have to make that move of the inflation amount out of the earnings reserve over into the corpus to make it work.
But again, they're playing the long game here, and this is what we're feeling. All right, let's move over to number 3, the latest top 20% ploy. We got about 4 minutes, Brad.
So I've gotten in some debates recently with some friends about this whole fiscal situation, and basically I've had a few situations in which people have responded by saying, "Well, spending's too high, and I'm not going to agree to taxes until spending comes down," and use that as a justification for no taxes and continued reliance on PFD cuts. Here, it's a top 20% ploy. I mean, basically, we've seen this session, spending's not going to come down. As I said, this session is an inflection point. You have a majority of Republicans in the House, and yet they voted for a budget that nevertheless continued historically high spending levels, and setting up additional programs like K through 12, child care, state-supported child care, all of which are going to continue to grow the budget in the future. So we've seen that spending is not going to come down. We're going to be lucky if spending doesn't increase. So it's disingenuous to say, I'm not going to pay taxes I'm not going to agree to taxes until spending comes down. Spending isn't going to come down. And so the choice is going forward, given that traditional revenues are on decline, the choice going forward is either PFD cuts or taxes as a way of filling the fiscal gap. If you're saying, I'm not going to agree to taxes, I'm not going to support taxes until spending comes down, what you're really saying is, I'm going to ignore reality. Spending isn't going to come down. And I'm going to stick on this no taxes pledge. And the consequence of that is going to be continued PFD cuts, deeper and deeper PFD cuts, as traditional revenues continue to decline and spending continues to go up. So when you tell me I'm not going to support taxes until spending comes down, what you're really telling me is you support continued deeper and deeper and deeper PFD cuts until the PFD is gone. And it sounds good. I mean, some of them, I think they say it in good faith, but that's the consequence. The consequence is you're telling me that you're going to support continued PFD cuts, but you don't want to debate the issue. You don't want to debate the fairness of the issue of relying on PFD cuts. You want to say that you're somehow against taxes because spending's too high.
Right.
Well, we're gonna have taxes one way or the other. It's either going to be PFD cuts.
Yeah, but you're not going to fix the spending is too high. You're just going to say, I mean, again, using it as window dressing. It's so frustrating. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Brad, thanks for coming on board and joining us. I appreciate that.
Michael, thanks.
All right, folks, we got more coming up. Hour 2 dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. I mean, that's the rub, Brad, right? I mean, out of the one side of their mouth, they're like, until we get the spending down, this is what we can't. But there's no will to cut spending. There's no will. There's no inclination. There's nothing. So it's just a way of, again, kicking the can down the road while paying lip service to, I mean, they know what the problem is. The problem is the spending, but nobody's willing to embrace that two-fisted, in that regard.
And they know what the solution is. They know what the solution to the increased spending is going to be: additional PFD cuts. So by saying they're not going to support alternative revenue measures, substitute revenue measures, while we continue to have high spending, it's an argument. It's an argument for PFD cuts. It is disingenuous for Republicans like Will Stapp or Justin Ruffridge or the others on that side of the majority. It's disingenuous for them to say no taxes because we're going to get spending down. They're not going to get spending down. They just voted for a budget that has increased spending over historic levels and has additional spending built into it by the passage of the setup for increase in K through 12 and a permanent increase in K through 12, a permanent increase in state supported child support, not to mention defined benefits coming behind. It's disingenuous to say that we're going to get spending down. That's going to be the solution. Not going to happen, guys. So here's the choice. How do you fund that spending? You're either going to fund it by equitable taxes that spread the burden across all of the state, including the top 20% and non-residents who would pay 7 to 10% of the burden if we went to taxes, or you're going to pay for it by head taxes on middle and lower income Alaska families in the form of PFD cuts. That's what's happening, one way or the other. And to say you're not going to support taxes, whatever excuse you give, to say you're not going to support taxes means what you're doing, in fact, is supporting PFD cuts. You're supporting continued deeper and deeper PFD cuts, as traditional revenues decline.
Which is just another form of tax anyway, right?
It is.
It doesn't fall under their no tax pledge, even though it's the most destructive form of taxation we have.
It's not a tax on them. I mean, here's the thing about when the top 20% say no taxes, what they're really saying is no taxes on me, on the top 20%. I don't care that there's head taxes, PFD cuts, the most regressive form of tax ever. I don't care, and I'm going to discount and ignore it. There's taxes on middle and lower income Alaska families. What no taxes really means in that discussion is no taxes on me. All I'm concerned about is me. And I don't want taxes on my top 40%. I'm not going to get spending under control, by the way. I don't want taxes on me. So you guys in the middle and lower income Alaska, middle and lower income Alaska families, you just continue paying and paying and paying and paying.
Right. Well, and here's Kevin saying the quiet part out loud. I've seen no evidence except on this show that there's political or general will to cut spending. That's it. I mean, that is the bad news. That's the quiet part that's out loud there. No, there is no will. There is no political, except for a handful of legislators. That's it.
That's the point. And now the question is, once that's the point, accept your point, Kevin. Once that's the point, the next question, and it's as important, if not more important question, is how do you pay for that spending then? As traditional revenues decline, how do you pay for that spending? And if you don't support taxes, broad-based taxes that hit the top 20% non-resident, if you don't support taxes to pay for that spending, then you're supporting PFD cuts. Taxes that fall hardest on middle and lower income Alaska families. That has the largest adverse impact on the overall Alaska economy. That's the choice. Once you accept that there is no will to cut spending, the question is, how do you fund it? The choices are either broad-based taxes that include the top 20% and non-residents, or narrowly based taxes that only hit middle and lower income Alaska families. And for the legislators who go around and say no taxes, what they're really saying is, I want to keep the taxes focused on middle and lower income Alaska families. I'm not willing to bear a part of the burden myself. I want no taxes on me and no taxes on non-residents. Which,
of course, is part of the whole problem here. Until there is a will to cut, these are the only solutions, which, again, the will to cut is not on the horizon. There's just nothing that we can. Again, I've been decrying this for 20 years that we need to get the spending under control. When Brad first started coming on the program, it was back in 2014. We were calling to live within our means, $4.1 billion at the time. And then they didn't do that. So then it was 4, and then it was 3.9. And we were calling for them to live within their means and to cut. And nobody, oh, yes, they'd nod. When you get them on the show, they'd nod. Oh, yes, we'd like to cut down. We'd live within that. That was a question I asked. Can we live in that $4.1 billion arena? Oh, yes. Look at us now. 9 years later, $6 billion, $5.5 billion. We can't live within our means. It's impossible. There is no will to make it happen. Final thoughts, Brad.
Well, and then from that, the next question is, how are you going to pay for it? If you're not willing to live within your means, if you're not willing to live within traditional revenues, how are you going to pay for the difference? And no taxes is an answer that simply is no taxes on what that really means is no taxes on the top 20%, no taxes on non-residents. Push the entire burden through PFD cuts to middle and lower income Alaska families. That needs to be clear. When somebody says no taxes anymore, what that very clear, regardless of how you phrase it, oh, I'm against spending, I'm not going to pay spending I'm not going to pay taxes until spending's down. Regardless of how you phrase it, if you say no taxes, what you're doing is siding with the top 20% non-residents against middle and lower income Alaska families.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you coming on board.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Thanks for covering me there during the break.
Or not.
All right, folks, we got more coming up. Thank you, Brad. We got more coming up. Hour 2 is dead ahead. Don't know what we're going to talk about, but we'll talk about something before we get joined by Chris Story. Here we go.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That's just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live
across the world on the interwebs at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Welcome back to the program. It is hour 2 of the big radio broadcast, and we just finished up with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets with the weekly top 3. And it's an exercise in frustration. I was going to say an exercise in futility, but we have made a few changes over the last couple of years. But I will tell you, from a 20-year standpoint, yeah, it feels like an exercise in futility sometimes, because I was just reminded that it was 2014 when Brad and I first started talking on the program continuously. And one of the first things that we talked about was the ICER report. And ICER in 2014 actually had a report out that said, here's the roadmap. Here's the roadmap for what the legislature needs to do if we want to continue with sustainability in the state of Alaska. And one of those roadmap points was the fact that the state budget could not exceed $4.1 billion at that point. That was one of the major benchmarks in 2014, going into the 2015 session, was that we could not exceed the $4.1 billion benchmark. And great. Okay, we see that. We understand. That's all great. And now, and in fact, that was one of the questions that I continually asked prospective politicians who were on the program, either to run for office or who were going into the next session, was, this is what ICER said. What say you? Can we live within that 4 point? Can you give us a commitment? I mean, does that, oh, yes, we can do that. We can do that. 4 point, well, absolutely. And then, of course, no, it exploded. There's just no way. So then the next half of the session, it was, well, ICER came back and revised the numbers, and they said, well, okay, now it's $3.9 billion, right? So can we do that? So we started asking the revised question. Can you do? Oh, of course we can do. And of course, now we could see exactly where that spending is at. This year's plan, regular and supplemental, 5.6. I mean, hell, even by fiscal year 18, this is just 3 short years after we started asking that question, the government spend was at $4.5 billion. And last, this fiscal year, with all the stuff and the bells and the whistles, $5.6 billion. There is no will to fix the spending problem in this state. Period. That's the thing. I mean, you and I believe in that. Listeners to this show believe in that. People who are listening on the radio or on the internet making comments, we all believe that. We are in the super minority, because there's a bunch of people out there who are like, oh, I like this program. I like that program. There's politicians who are in there like, oh, yeah, you could cut that, but just don't cut my program. Just don't cut as long as I get my pound of flesh and my 30 pieces of silver, and I get my capital project, or I get my thing, or the ag department doesn't get defunded or whatever, as long as that happens, I'm all for cuts, as long as you don't cut where I live. That's, I mean, as long as it's all thing, as long as those things, as long as that's is just don't cut where I live. Or don't cut my pet project or my secret program or whatever it is. That's where we're at right now, folks. We are in, I mean, I would almost say a super minority. Because there's just no will. There's just no will. I mean, even with our own, even here in the Matsu, I mean, it was an additional $10 million in road projects or capital projects that got a budget passed that was larger than anything we'd ever seen. Right? Or nearly anything we'd ever seen. Because the projects were in there. And there's just no will. There's just no will to get it done. And you think about it and you break it back down to what it looks like from a per person standpoint, from an individual standpoint. And when you realize that for the average family of four, the state is spending $60,000 a year on state government for the average family of four, and the average family's going, well, where does it all go? But don't cut it. Don't cut. I mean, I just don't cut it. Why? Perception? Some kind of perceived benefit? Some kind of, I don't know. What are you getting for your nearly $15,000 for every man, woman, and child? What are you getting for each one of those things? I doubt that many people could name it. But they hear about a good program, and boy, they really don't want to cut anything because the children or the dogs or the ponies or the butterflies or some reason why we can't possibly cut it because, I mean, And yeah, maybe it's because we're, Brian just said the Matsu is larger than it has ever been. But yes, I understand. Maybe we need to spend more money on the Matsu because it's larger than it's ever been. But at some point, we all have to go, maybe we should take a cut too. Maybe we should be willing to take a cut, even just for a year. My God, just do something. There is no will to fix it. And I mean, I don't, I mean, it's depressing. Yes, it is. I mean, just again, think about how I feel about this 20 plus years of saying the same thing over and over and over again and watching as the things that I'm not a freaking genius. I'm not a rocket scientist, but even I could see when the spending outweighs the income, there's going to be problems, right? I mean, I've run a household budget. I can at least figure that out. And when I've been saying this for 20 years, I don't have to be a freaking economist to figure it out. That when you're taking stuff, you just, but we can't cut because the children or the dogs or the animals or the whatever, the Department of Agriculture, the farmers will be, look, here's the thing. This is a nationwide, talking about farmers and government subsidies. You want to talk about a total poo parade that is a self-inflicted wound like you ain't never seen before. That's part of the problem. But I remember that was during the Dunleavy, the apocalyptic budget, remember? And that was one of the first to cave on that was Delana Johnson for Palmer because they'd cut, what did they cut? $60,000? No, maybe it was more than that. I can't remember how much. They cut at the Department of Agriculture. And she was like, but the farmers are just, either everybody's got to feel it or nobody feels it. We feel it in a different way. You either cut the budget or we get squeezed in some other way. How about those farmers now losing all their PFDs or the farmers' customers losing their PFDs and now not having money to spend in that direction as well? But we can't do that. Oh my God, you people. I had such a good vacation and now here's where I am. Here's why I am. I had such a good vacation and I came back all day. But I mean, it's the same thing, right? And again, Kevin said the quiet part out loud. With the exception of this show and maybe a handful of people outside of this show, nobody gives two craps about whether or not the government is overspending. They really don't. They really don't. In fact, they're all standing around in line with their hand out for government spend. I mean, now I saw the headline. It was the headline. I don't remember if it was ADN or if it was the Beacon or whatever, but now it's like, oh, well, the healthcare, the daycare workers and the Alaska child care providers say that the funds approved by the legislature are crucial to staying open. Well, something's wrong with your business model if for some reason you can't stay open or, prices need to be raised or something. If we need government intervention to keep a business open, that's a problem because that's not how the free market's supposed to work. But here you've got the government picking winners and losers, doing it all over again and meddling in the market and screwing it up even more. And I guarantee you in 5 years, it'll be, instead of, $7 million that they put into childcare, it'll be a $30 million a year industry that's all funded, that's all funded by government, and people will be, kowtowing to the state to make sure that they get their government money for the child care and all that. I mean, it's going to happen. It's just, there is just no will to fix it. Period. Look at this last vote that the House did. Look at this last vote. No will. No will at all. Period. Full stop. End of sentence. So what should you do? Well, I mean, we still got to decry it. We still got to whine about it. We still got to, shout from the rooftops. We still got to, but in the long run, you best make sure your own house is in order. That's all I'm saying right now. I mean, where are we now? They're saying the drop dead date for the national budget is June the 6th now. That's the new date where we default on everything, right? June the 6th. That's the new date. That's what they just said. So, I mean, here we are at the national level playing footsies with apocalyptic financial destruction and, acting like it's no big deal. We'll just negotiate it right down to the 11th hour, meanwhile damaging the economy. In the state of Alaska, we'll just basically throw a monkey wrench into everything and deal with it and play games with people's lives and the economy. I got to tell you, folks, you could control you. You best get debt free. You best make sure you got everything you need on hand. You just better be prepared for any eventuality. In omnia paratus, ready for anything, because, baby, we have no control over any of this. I mean, we have some minute control over what happens in the state. We've helped encourage people to get elected, and we've done some of these changes. But in the whole, because they're down there in Juneau, away from everybody, and there's just susceptible as hell to all this kind of external pressure of more and more and more government spend, and we have a vanishingly small voice in this, you best get your own house in order. That's all I'm saying right now. That's my final thought on that. Because, again, just going back with Brad, 2014, almost, 9 years ago now, I started with Brad, and we were saying the same thing. And 10 years before that, I was saying the same thing. And 4 years before that, I've been saying the same thing since I first opened the microphone and started this program and said, we've got a problem in this state, and it's state spending. And they all roll their eyes and look at me like, oh, what do you know, you young punk 25-year-old kid, what do you know? Well, I can look at a checkbook and see what's going on. And here I am 25 years later. Yep, I was right. All right. I mean, I hate to be the guy that said I told you so, but I told you so. See? I feel better now. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Chris Story is about to be our guest here on the program, and we're going to talk with him here in just a second. Let's get all this done. Oh my God, so many things to talk about. I'll go over here to this. All right, got it. That was my grumbling, in case you couldn't tell. That was my grumbling. Hey, listen to that. The phone works.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Mr. Story. What are you doing? What
a morning it is. I'm drinking coffee. I'm thinking. I'm solving world problems and looking out at the beautiful Ketchikan Bay, all in one fell swoop.
Man, that is some serious. You got some serious. Yeah, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, heavy is the burden.
Heavy is the burden. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. By the way, I hate you so much right now. So many thoughts running through my head, working on Chris's book this weekend. And, man, what a nail biting, white knuckled ride. It's an amazing story. If you haven't read Chris's books yet, both his self-help books, Born to Live and The Backyard Millionaire, and his fictional work, The Making of Man, Jacob Mann series. And I'm working on the new one right now, The Watchmen. And wow, man, it was quite a thriller. And I'm excited to be able to pass it to you this week.
And here's just one proviso.
Yeah.
I experienced something. I gave out some advanced reading copies just to listeners, just to be kind of get, is there any little quirks or little, glitches that I need to fix? And I will tell you this, it's not the same. So if you really enjoyed Born to Live and The Backyard Millionaire, as you just call them, self-help, parable type stories, this may not be for you. There is nothing self-help about this series. So it may not be for you. Just a warning so I just don't want to confuse people. That's all.
No, it's a thriller. I mean, it's a thriller with no redeeming qualities. I mean, I'm just.
That's what somebody said. That's what a guy told me, that his characters have no redeeming qualities, and I agreed with them. 100%. And I think it was that disappointment lives in the gully between expectation and reality. And
right.
So I just want to set the reality straight. These are two different types of books.
It was definitely.
But thank you, Michael.
It's definitely, it's a fun read, and I'm not quite done with it. I was hoping to be done with it this weekend, but it is. I mean, I'm done reading it, but I'm not done performing it yet, and it is quite a. It's quite a thrill ride. I can see Chris is living vicariously through his character sometimes. I'm just saying. It's oh man, good thing your wife is your first reader, right? I mean, you got to get all that past her when it's all done.
That's right.
It's
exactly.
It's all good stuff. All right. Well, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that the stream doesn't crash here, because we had a crash during the last hour, and so we've recovered, but it seems like everything's going well. What's our topic for today, Chris?
Make up your minds.
Make up your minds. Okay. All right. We got it. Then we will continue here, and we will make up our mind. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
That's right. Not your daddy. I'm not Chris Story's daddy either, which is good to know. Chris, I'd be so disappointed. Chris Story, the man from Homer. As we continue on, the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Good morning, Chris Story. We're ready to dive in with both feet and get things going on. What's happening, my friend? Are you you all rejuvenated from the Memorial Day weekend?
Yes. Yep. As a matter of fact, we had about 30 people, I guess, at our family gathering yesterday, 30 of us stories and kinfolk. It was wonderful. It was a great day to be together. And, it's kind of like, are you supposed to say happy Memorial Day? I don't know, but it really was a time to reflect on, how we are able to still gather and be free just
Right.
based on those who've fallen. So it was a wonderful time to be together, and we had a great weekend. Thanks for asking. How about you?
It wasn't it wasn't bad. I was just going to say it wasn't good. It was great. I mean, we had a good time. It was just a quiet family gathering, real quiet around the old household. We ended up hanging out, doing some things around the house, a little gardening, a little this, got together, broke some bread, fired up the barbecue grill, finally got my grill fixed, and had some dead cow and stuff, and it was good. It was it was
Nice.
enjoyable.
A friend of mine and an avid listener of yours drove past at some point during our gathering and saw our whole group together. And I didn't see his text till much later. But he said, "I hope it's not Bud Light you're drinking." I was able to assure him later, no Bud Light was consumed during our Memorial Day.
Yeah, because that would be a true crime. That would be a true crime. All right. So today, your self-help, your betterment segment, the positivity guru, you want to tell us to make up our minds. That's what your whole premise is today. So hit us with it.
And minds, of course, being a fun pun, it's obviously a plural on purpose because there's three minds. You do not have a single mind, you have three minds. You have your subconscious mind, your conscious mind, we all know that. But the third mind you may not be as attuned to or aware of, and that's called the super conscious mind. So breaking them down, starting with the most obvious, the subconscious
Okay.
mind, essentially is just pure power. It's always moving, it's always on, it's working whether you give it direction or not. It's like kinetic energy that's just ready to be harnessed. And it's a bit like a power plant. If you think about a generator doesn't care what you use the electricity for. It doesn't care if you're powering a light bulb, be it LED or incandescent. It doesn't care if you're trying to cook or heat with it, or use it to fire up an electric chair in Florida or Texas. It just doesn't care. It's there to generate power. And that's what our subconscious mind does. It's a neutral power, just pure force ready to be harnessed by you. So that's the subconscious. And then, of course, obviously, your conscious mind is a bit like the conductor in front of an orchestra. It's there to direct, it delegates tasks to the subconscious mind. It's the programmer programming the computer, which of course is your subconscious. It determines what the horsepower of your subconscious mind is going to do or be used for. So that's your conscious mind. So those two, we know it. We probably let our subconscious go a little bit dormant sometimes, and then we'll come back through maybe reading or prayer or guided meditation, whatever, and come back to the realization, that's right. I need to re-engage my subconscious mind. I need to put it to work to help me to become healthy, wealthy, prosperous, whatever it is that you're looking for. You can put it to work. Your subconscious mind never forgets, though, to make your heart beat,
Right.
pump blood through your veins and keep your nervous system going and your breathing. You never forget to take a breath. That's your subconscious mind constantly working, but you get to program it as you see fit, which leads to then the lesser known consciousness, which is the super conscious mind.
Okay, so we got the regular consciousness, we got the subconsciousness, and now we have the super consciousness. The sub and the regular mind work together, like you said, hand in hand. You use the regular consciousness to program the subconscious, which goes to work behind the scenes, doing its thing, doing all that stuff. What is the super consciousness?
And those two I like to describe as the Reese's peanut butter cup of the mind. They're perfect together, chocolate and peanut butter.
Oh, man.
I'm hungry. The super conscious mind is your ability to tap into the universal consciousness. And a wonderful author in 1925 named Florence Scovel Shinn, she was an artist turned author and thought leader in the Unitarian Church. She referred to this as God mind, your God mind. It's the source, your super conscious mind is your ability to tap into all sources of creativity, meaning. There's not a lot of meaning found in your subconscious mind. I mean, there's really no sense of meaning if your subconscious fails your respiratory system, but meaning comes from your super conscious mind. And it's a place where inspiration lives, divine ideas, guidance, a knowing or intuition. That's where the super conscious comes in, and you've got access to it. And it doesn't mean that you're not. In other words, the subconscious mind is at work whether you program it or not. The super conscious mind takes a little more work, takes a little more effort to tap into. You have to be pretty intentional about tapping into the super consciousness. It isn't just, well, for good or evil, you're using it every day, and that's your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind will whip you like a dog with respect to things you've done wrong or haven't done or know you should have, and it's constantly whipping you back and forth like a whipsaw, either for good or for bad. But your super conscious mind is a little bit like, imagine you're living in a home with a computer set up at a desk. The computer's connected to the internet, and you just don't use it. It just sits there. It's not doing anything. It's neutral. It's just sitting there. It's not whipping back and forth like your subconscious mind. It just sits there. And yet you can go to that computer and tap into this super consciousness, this internet, if you will, anytime you want to, but you have to intentionally go do it. Again, otherwise it just sits there powered down.
It's interesting because we've talked about the super consciousness in a different way before, because, it's like two people, this is pre-internet, right? Two people on opposite sides of the world have exactly the same inspirational thought, and they invent and create something that is almost identical. Two different sides of the planet. This has happened time and time and time again. We find out that within days or weeks of each other, two people invent something new or create some kind of theory or come up. I mean, we've talked about this kind of super consciousness, that overall thing. You've just got to figure out how to tap into that super highway of information out there in the ether. So how do we do that? How do we program our minds, using our consciousness and our subconsciousness to access that part of reality?
I think the first thing is to essentially recognize that these three minds exist and accept that. And if you're having a hard time accepting and going, God, you're these two idiots once again, traipsing down the metaphysical highway. God. Well, if you're there, then you'll probably keep that door closed. Or maybe you've already accepted it and you're like, yeah, but I don't care for the more metaphysical approach because for me it's prayer. That's great. Prayer is my on-ramp to the super consciousness. I pray, use affirmations constantly. Every day in my journal, I'm writing down essentially who I'm praying for, what I'm praying for, and gratitude. And I combine those two things. So that's my way onto the super conscious highway, if you will. You could use another way, but I think it's accepted, first of all, that there are these three minds. Controlling your subconscious mind to prevent you from going down these dark roads. And I'm not talking about real depression that's clinical. I'm talking about where we can all feel a little depressed or down, or dark moods and gray days and so forth. Programming your consciousness, your subconsciousness, through your conscious mind, practicing that, becoming really good at it, and then adding in, for however it works for you, adding in access to this super conscious that we're talking about. In other words, knowing, just allow it and knowing. I think you already know. You already have a sense, but you've probably been shutting the door. There's something you want to do. There's something that you're here to do, but you might be just pushing it back a little bit, maybe because the uncontrolled subconscious mind is, again, whipping you back into place. And that's where your consciousness will direct it to be quiet. Subconscious, you be quiet, do what I tell you to do. I'm programming you. I'm using affirmations. I'm guiding myself with goals, and I'm looking forward, and I'm moving in this direction. Now you just be quiet and do your job, subconscious mind. Then begin to allow intuition into your life, that knowing, that still small voice in the back of your mind, not the negative one, but the one that has divine inspiration for you. And that can be simply, doesn't have to be that you come down from the mountain with tablets. It doesn't mean that you have to invent some new heart valve that nobody's ever thought of before. Those are all wonderful things, but that doesn't necessarily have to be your relationship to super consciousness. And I think just an acceptance. For me, again, it's God. For me, it's knowing that there is a higher power, and that I'm beholden to that higher power, and I'm loving it. And I try to tap. There are days and weeks that I will ignore, and then I come back and go, wait a minute, I see. I know exactly. I know where I went wrong. I'm shutting the door on super consciousness, and then I wake myself back up to it. And I think waking up is probably maybe the best analogy. And as John Popper, a blues traveler, said, once you're awake, you can never go back to sleep again.
Well, and it's like the carrier wave, right? I mean, it's always there in the background. It's always there. You just have to learn how to tap the lightning and tap into it. And you do that through look, there's people that go through life that are just I mean, I wouldn't say stumbling through life, but they're just they're riding the subway. You know what I mean? They're going from point A to point B. They're riding the subway. They're doing what they're just along for the ride. And then there's others that take conscious control of it, control their minds, and then use that mind to program the subconscious to achieve a bigger goal, whether, like you said, that's health, wealth, prosperity, fame, something important, discovery, invention, science, whatever it is. And then there's those that use that and then use the programming to then tap into something. So there's almost like there's three levels. Those who are just along for the ride, those who take that first step to kind of control their thoughts, to use, because that's the one thing we have absolute control of is our thoughts, to use those thoughts to then program the subconscious to put it to work. It's the supercomputer behind the scenes crunching the numbers and running the algorithms and decrypting everything in the background for us after we program it. And then once that's all done, then it connects us to the superhighway of universal intellect or, God mind or, whatever you want to call it, the spirit, the muse of intuition or inspiration, all those things. We could choose any step of the road of where we want to be, but it has to be, I mean, this is the ultimate of free will. It has to be a choice to do those things. You just don't trip on it. You just don't trip over it and be like, oh, look what I discovered. You have to work on it.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. And you're like the chat GPT of everything I'm saying. You put it into a very intellectual state. Thank you. And the other thing I would say too is that to let go. I think so many of us right now, be it from a global geopolitical perspective or just nationally or statewide or even locally, have anger and are holding that anger and are holding hatred for our leaders or the leaders of other countries or Xi Jinping of the Communist Party, Chinese Communist Party. We're holding hatred for so many people. And I think that is a filter. It's a filter in a negative way. It's filtering out a lot of the super consciousness. And I'm not suggesting that we simply sing kumbaya and hold hands and say whatever will be. No, I am suggesting, though, that the solution and the answer will not come to us while we're angry. I think we have to calm our minds using our conscious mind to calm the subconscious, the waters of the subconscious mind, in order to get the message from and get through to the universal mind or the super conscious mind. And that hatred towards a neighbor, that hatred towards somebody that you think has done you wrong, wherever they are, maybe it's not even about you, but it's what they've done to the country or what they've done to whomever. I mean, I was holding a lot of anger towards Mitch McConnell in the last senatorial race that he pumped $15 some odd million of hate into our state towards Kelly Chewbacca. And I was angry, just so angry at Mitch McConnell. I was like, gotta let it go. No, don't forget. And obviously we want to be aware from a political perspective, but that hatred and that anger is doing me no good and doing no good for the solution, which I was blocking from my own mind. And so I think we all have somebody we can relate to, in that perspective. Maybe it's not Mitch McConnell, maybe it's somebody else, or it's something that was done to you or you perceived was done to you. It's time to let go of that. A meaningful life isn't about carrying around those burdens. It's a lot of weight. I watched a really wonderful, I've talked about the Viktor Frankl's book, The Man's Search for Meaning, many times, but I was watching a video. I found a 16-minute long YouTube video from the early 1980s. And I was just watching. It's the first time I've ever seen Viktor Frankl speaking, heard many of his speeches and read his book, but to watch him and to see somebody who had been through 3 concentration camps, his entire family decimated, millions of his brothers and sisters of his faith and his people just destroyed, and he had no anger Just like Nelson Mandela, once he was released from prison, had released long ago the hatred for the people that put him there unjustly such. And I think that's probably the best way to relate that I can to the super consciousness. Starts with forgiveness, and maybe that you just have to forgive yourself first of all before you can move on and access what's waiting for you. But there's something for you to do that only you can do.
So Yoda was right. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. That's what it's all about. So
yes,
exactly.
there it is. What a great little green man.
I'm always breaking it down for you. Chris Story, the man from Homer. Make up your minds, all three of them, your consciousness, your subconscious, and when you can connect to it, the super consciousness. I love it. I mean, it remind again, these segments are for me, folks. I don't know if you're getting anything, but I'm definitely getting something. Chris Story, the man from Homer, my friend, thank you so much for coming on board today and sharing with us. As always, great stuff, deep and lovely.
My pleasure.
And I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you this weekend. I'm hoping this weekend while I'm down there.
Good.
All right.
Do it.
We will talk to you soon. Chris Story, the man from Homer. Hold the line. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense. Liberty-based. Free thinking radio. Back with more after this.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay, final thoughts. Chris Story. I mean, maybe people don't understand the metaphysical mumbo jumbo, but it works. I mean, that's the thing. If you don't agree with it, you don't call it if Chris didn't label it the thing that you want to label it, it's not new agey and crystal. It's prayer. It's thought. It's connecting to the Holy Spirit. It's, whatever it is, whatever phraseology you put on it, it all basically falls under the same umbrella, right? I mean, somebody else may call it the universal intellect. I think that was one of Napoleon Hill's favorite things, is the mastermind and universal intellect. But he was talking about the God mind. He was talking about the Holy Spirit. He was talking about connecting yourself and getting the internal correctly facing so that the antenna would then receive the message from the sender, right? I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I keep getting this sense that we're at the precipice or in the midst of or the beginnings of a spiritual revolution. And I think more and more of us are going to wake up to that as an accepted way to solve what appear to be insurmountable problems facing all of humanity right now. And I'm not talking about a half a degree warming over the next 100 years. I'm talking about real problems that we are creating for ourselves every single day and bringing upon ourselves. I think this revolution is at hand. I think more of us, we've reached the bottom, potentially in the race to the bottom. I think we've won, and now we can build back up. No, not build back better, just build back up towards something greater.
I hope you're right. I really do. I hope you're right. I think that
I just sense it.
Yeah, just this reminder that, again, there are very few things that we can control in life. We can control our conscious thought. We need to help direct it. We need to move it into the subconscious, and then maybe, just maybe, tap into the spirit and be able to, see bigger, better things, to be able to create, to be able to enjoy, be able to love, be able to come up with ideas, thoughts, and things that will make the overall thing better. I mean, I have to think that that's the way. I mean, because otherwise it's just too depressing, right? I mean, I have to think that it's this way.
Hopeless.
Because the alternative is hopelessness. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, like I was saying earlier in the program, this show in some ways feels like, just in some ways, an exercise in futility. I've been saying the same thing for 25 years. I've been saying the same, talking about the same issues, talking about the same things. Does that mean I'm going to stop? No. But it does get frustrating. And so you have to make sure that you get your mind right to be able to continue the struggle, because eventually, you don't grow weary in well doing. You keep doing what you can do. But you need to get a hold of that still small voice in your head. And if it's negative, you need to strangle it hard. And if it's positive, you need to feed it. And that's,
and I guess You could probably, Michael, you could look at it a couple of ways. You could look at it like you've been going to the ocean with a teaspoon trying to empty it, or you could look at it and just say you've been leading people to the ocean, and you have been. And I'm not trying to, placate you. I'm just literally saying you do not know the influence and the impact you've had. It's not measurable. In other words, the metric by which you might be measuring your results of this last 25 years is probably wrong. In other words, you can't base it on the fact that we're still running a multi-billion-dollar negative budget, or that
Right.
the country hasn't solved this particular thing. You've been a leader guiding people to the truth and to
Right.
waking up to a consciousness that, to bring it full circle, is important and powerful. So it is hard to measure our own success based on that particular metric. I think it's the wrong rubric. You should pick another topic or another way to measure it, which is, oh man, look at the audience I have now statewide and worldwide on your internet. You don't know who you were actually impacting. I think it's much greater than maybe the credit you're giving yourself.
Well, I've come to the conclusion that I'll never know the full impact of what I've done until I've died, because you just don't know. I mean, because again, radio is amorphous, the internet, the stream, the thing goes out. You don't know how many people's minds you've changed or things you've influenced. And
Mrs. Dukes was texting me that same thing over the weekend. Until Michael dies, we won't know.
We won't.
Terry, no, it's too soon.
Wait, that's not right. That's just not right. Anyway, it's good to remember these things. And again, I wish more people would stick around for these segments just to hear what you have to say, because I think it's important. But regardless, even if it was just you and me on the telephone, I'd do it every week, because I definitely need it myself. So Chris Story, master storyteller, and all around good guy, and one of my good best friends. Thank you, my friend, for coming on board and sharing with me. As always, it's good to hear from you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Chris Story, the man from Homer, brings us the good stuff. The good stuff. Okay. One final segment here of the show. What am I going to talk about? No idea. No idea. We're going to figure it out, though, one way or to other. We're going to figure it out, and we will continue. Please like and share if you haven't done that already. Like and follow. If you're out on YouTube, or if you haven't gone to YouTube, would you go subscribe and ring the bell and do all the YouTube-y things? I haven't looked at my YouTube account in a while, but I imagine it's still probably under 500 people. I need 1,000 people on YouTube to make some changes and do some other things. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
That's right, the show with double intros. That's like me introducing myself. Hey, that's what happens sometimes when you get talking. Hey, good morning, and thank you for being part of the program today. We're into the final segment of the show, and I've got... I don't know. I think Chris just said some things here in the final, while we were in the commercial break, because Chris hung with us for a minute there. We were talking about things, and he reminded me that, like I said earlier, this is, it's a little frustrating. We are in the minority, and we continue to be in the minority. And I've come to the conclusion that over the last 24 years, 25 years, we have always been in the minority, even though we felt like, oh, this is a red state, man. This state is so, we're rugged individualists, and we're just always the, but the problem is that it's not really true. It's not really true. That's really not what's going on. We are a state that has created, that is based on dependency. We have a lot of different things going on that basically foster that dependency state. And we have no interest in living within our means and doing everything else. The PFD is going to be gone. Whether it's 2 years, whether it's 5 years, 8 years, whatever the number is, sometime in your lifetime, providing you live the next 5-8 years, the PFD is going to be gone. And then we're going to be faced with a bigger challenge. And I don't think anything's really going to change. We've got a few voices in there in the legislature that fight for this stuff, a few that, do what they can do. But overall, there is no changing that situation. Now, does that mean that we roll over and we crawl into a ball and we cry because we're just not getting it done? No, doesn't mean that. Like I said, I've been doing this for a couple decades. I'm used to it by now. Maybe I'm changing one mind. Maybe we're changing one voice. Maybe we created, you encourage one person to get out there and to do what need to be done, right? Maybe that's what happened. You just don't know. And Chris just said it, he goes, because I said, sometimes I feel like I don't know if I'm making any effect because I've been doing the same thing for so long. The bottom line is I will never really know how many people have been affected by the words that I've spoken over the last 25 years until I'm dead and I'm looking down from the pearly gates, God willing. And I understand, I can see maybe the lives that I've touched. So I have to go on faith that those things are going to go, that are going to happen, that the things that I'm doing are the right things, because this is a path that I've chosen and this is what I want to do. And you guys have got to do the same thing. You've got to decide. You've got to act like everyone's watching and you've got to do the right thing. And you've got to keep making the noise and going through the motions and doing what you need to do to try and fix it. Meanwhile, you're also making sure that your own house is in order, as I said earlier, because I think that's important. You always want to have a fail-safe because let's face it, if the wheels come off the bus, and by that I mean like financially, if for example, we come up on the whole debt ceiling thing and we default in the United States, I mean, that's going to create a whole kind of catastrophic fiscal crisis, right? If we here in the state of Alaska, if we screw things up, all it means is that we lose the PFD and that there will be taxes and we'll be paying for more government and it's going to cost us money and all that kind of stuff. In which case, my suggestion still makes sense. Get your fiscal house in order. Pay off your debts, pay off your loans, get your property owned free and clear, do what you can do. Maybe invest in some other, real estate so that you have some actual, physical assets that you have available to you and could do things like that. Because then it's prepare for the worst and hope for the best, and all your surprises will be happy ones. If you've done all this stuff, then your life and you're fiscally secure, at least that pressure's off your back, even if nothing else changes. But if something does go wrong, at least that you're taken care of, right? I mean, that's the whole point of this stuff. Anyway, I always get so super philosophical when Chris comes on because he makes me think about things beyond that. I've opened up the phone lines. I want to say a special thank you to our friends over there at Satellite West for helping to sponsor the program today. Satellite West from, Selawik to Sitka from Metlakatla to Menchumina, from Minto to Mirror Lake. Wherever you want to go in the state of Alaska, Satellite West has got you covered with a whole slew of technology that will allow you to stay in contact, whether it's phone calls or text messages or surfing the internet or sending emails. Satellite West, proud sponsors of the show. Thank you so much. Phone number to call this morning, 907-433-3150. We don't have time for much, maybe one or two calls. Coming up tomorrow, I don't know what we're going to talk about yet because Mike Shower is on vacation, but I'm thinking about doing a What If Wednesday. And if that's something that you want to hear, please send me an email, let me know, or tell me in the chat that a What If Wednesday is what you want to talk about. Let's go over to the phones and see what the final thoughts are for today as we go forward. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Well, this is Rattles up in Pleasant Valley.
Hello, Rattles. What's on your mind, my friend?
Well, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I went into Fairbanks on Friday, and 6 different people came up to me and thanked me for scolding you for taking Friday off.
Okay. Well, good.
And then when I came home here, a couple more people mentioned it, right? I was wondering why you're in there today, because today is the original Memorial Day. Memorial Day is May the 30th.
Right. Well, I have to follow convention, unfortunately. And so I just celebrated it along with everybody else because I had to go along to get along.
I want to play you a song on my radio program. It's called 7 Day Weekend.
I love that. As I said earlier in the program, I said the best thing about a 4-day weekend, the only thing better is a 5-day weekend. That's what I want. I mean, just give me the 5, 6, 7-day weekend. I'm all about that. I would love that.
You'll just retire.
I could, I should just retire. That'd be good, except for, the food and the mortgage and all that pesky stuff. I probably would retire. That sounds enjoyable to me. All right, Rattles.
Well, one thing good, I'm not in debt, and I'm glad of that.
No, I mean, that is definitely a plus. And like I said before, if you get your own house in order, it definitely takes the normal day-to-day stress off things, right? You don't have to worry about mortgages and all that other stuff. If you're debt-free, financially set, you don't have to be a millionaire, but if you're financially debt-free, then it definitely gives you a little bit more peace of mind, right?
I need some more big yellow equipment.
Yeah. Well, you got to go play in the dirt. That's what you need to do. All right. Well, thank you, Rattles. I appreciate you calling in, my friend. Thanks for keeping me honest, scolding me for not being here on Friday, because, that's okay. That's okay. People can scold all they want. It's not going to stop me from taking Fridays off occasionally. I mean, come on. I had to laugh because I was doing some vacation days or something for the radio station, and they said, yeah, you've still got like 15 days of vacation that you got to use or lose. Oh, man, don't you hate that? Hate it when you don't use your vacation when you should. That's the bummer part. All right, well, coming up again tomorrow, I'm thinking about, again, doing a What If Wednesday, which is just a general discussion on just a general discussion on different things and ideas on how you can prepare yourself and your family. Now, whether that's financially, whether it's physically, whether it's fiscally, whether it's, I don't know. I think it'd be a good discussion just to have and talk about and talk about what makes that work for many people. I will say this, definitely being prepared for things definitely gives you some peace of mind, which I think is good. I think, we could all use a little less stress, right? All right. Well, we are, we're ready to jump back into this tomorrow, 6 a.m. Come join us. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Again, special thanks to Satellite West for sponsoring the program statewide. We'll be back with more soon, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Be kind, love one another, live well. Okay, my friends. Well, we are out of time. Ready to jump in for tomorrow. I hope you enjoy your Tuesday, not your Monday, because 4-day work week. That's the best thing about a 3-day weekend is the 4-day work week. All right, my friends. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.